Hi and welcome to HowToET.tv. My name's Ethan and today we are joined by Nottingham City Councillor and Green Party representative Richard Mallender to investigate the causes and effects of global warming.
Okay, my name is Richard Mallender. I'm a Green Party councillor on Rushcliffe Borough Council. I've been a councillor since 2007 in Rushcliffe and before that for 4 years on Brighton and Hove City Council.
As a representative of the Green Party, could you please briefly explain what the main policies of the Green Party are?
Okay, well, we've got a number of policies and we look at various policy areas. So we obviously look at the environment, which is the one where we're most concerned and most known, which is where we're looking at reducing the impact of greenhouse gases, going to a much more renewable health. We are much more concerned with avoiding conflict around the world rather than building up a massive arms industry, which is what is happening very unfortunately at the moment. For energy, a sustainable future. We're very concerned with health as well. We would like to see more funding going into the health service and the public side of funding rather than the private side. And we are to do with greening transport as well. And we deal with a lot of social issues as well, like housing, where we're in favour of building a lot more social housing and council housing as it used to be known.
One of our greatest environmental concerns is global warming. Could you please explain what global warming is and how it might affect us now and in the future?
Well, global warming is the steady increase around the whole world in the temperature of the atmosphere and the oceans. And it might not feel like it this evening as it's a bit chilly here, but what's happening around the world is that because of the huge amount of carbon dioxide that's being put into the atmosphere by industry, by transport, by agriculture as well, and other greenhouse gases like methane as well, which is an even more powerful one, that's actually creating what's called a greenhouse effect. In other words, the sun's energy can get in, but it's trapped and not as much of it escapes as used to. And the result of that is that the atmosphere and then the oceans gradually warm, and then that becomes an accelerating feedback as you get a situation where ice caps begin to melt, there is less sunlight reflected back away from the Earth, and that produces an accelerated warming effect. And that's something that started happening really around the time of the Industrial Revolution and has been increasing and increasing since then. And with the huge amount of fossil fuels that are now burnt around the world, releasing massive amounts of CO2, it's producing an accelerated greenhouse effect, which is perpetuating global warming. Well, the effects are not always felt so much in the UK because of where we are. We have a fairly temperate climate. But generally around the world we see an increase in the size of deserts, we see a reduction in the amount of ice cap. That leads to rising sea levels. It produces change in climate and weather patterns. It tends to produce more extreme weather as well. So you get more floods happening around the world. You get droughts that will happen for longer. You find parts of the world where the temperature gets too high for certain crops to grow again. And again, you get expansion of deserts. And generally it produces, well, it makes it harder for us as a species to continue to exist. But we're quite adaptable, whereas hundreds, millions of other species around the world can't adapt, can't move, and can't deal with those effects. So it has an effect on biodiversity. It produces extinction as well.
Thank you. Please could you tell us how we can globally and each of us individually reduce global warming?
Well, locally and for individually, it's all about choices. And it can be as simple as things as reducing the amount of plastic in your life. So, do you need to have so many plastic cups, so many plastic pens, plastic cutlery in some schools and some businesses as well, when really what we should be using is ones that are not made from oil, because that's coming out of the ground, that's from fossil fuels, that's from fossil energy sources. We should think about trying to reduce the amount of energy that we use in everyday lives as well. So do you need to leave the lights on so long? Could people walk to school or walk to work or cycle to work rather than doing the school run and getting in the car so often? And globally, it means working together with other countries a lot more positively and through international organisations to say, look, we need to all work together to cut the amount of greenhouse gases that's being produced, reduce the amount of coal that's being burnt, reduce the amount of oil that's being burnt as well, and actually make sure that we have renewable energy sources like solar, like wind, like wave, and so on.
Thank you. And as a computer expert, do you think that technology has a place in improving our environment?
It's a long time since I've been called an expert in computing. Yes, it does. Technology allows us to do things in a much more smarter way. It allows us to, in climate change, for example, run models that can work out what the effects of climate change will be, produce much more accurate weather forecasts, much more accurate forecasts of global warming, and see what we can do to combat that. It also allows us to run machinery much more efficiently. So without computing power and with new technology, for example, we wouldn't have 3D printing. And that kind of additive technology is a much more efficient use of resources than taking a block of metal and grinding it down to the shape you need, for example.
Do you think schools are teaching us enough about the problem of global warming?
I think that it gets taught quite well in schools these days. I think that the problem is not in schools. I think that it's taught there, people understand it as a science. I think it's when people get out of schools and they're faced with the everyday world that a lot of this kind of just gets almost forgotten or put to one side. So I think it gets taught well in schools at the moment, yes.
And finally, as my school friends will be watching this, what key tips would you give to all young people to prevent global warming?
I think it's simple things. There's a saying, think global, act local. So it's don't get in the car and go for a drive with your parents when you, or go on journeys with your parents in the car when you could easily walk or bicycle. It's good for you, it's healthier, you get a bit fitter as well. Reduce the amount of plastics that you use. Reduce the amount of palm oil. You'll find palm oil in all kinds of things, from soaps to margarines, but lots of palm oil is made in grown in plantations that have been planted in places like Indonesia, where rainforest has been cut down. So reduce the amount of palm oil in your life as well, and you can always find it on the ingredients. Those are some easy things to do.
Mr. Mallender, thank you very, very much for your time and help today.
Thank you, Ethan.
Thanks for watching HowToET.tv. There will be another video hopefully coming soon, and if you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you. Bye.